welcome to this edition of Food Waste Matters, brought to you by Honey and Fox, sponsored by the Fight Food Waste CRC. I'm Andrew Robertson, joining you for a series of conversations with industry leaders on the front lines in the fight against food waste. And we're going to be discussing business, innovation, and how these concepts combine to reduce food waste in Australia and indeed around the world. Be sure to check out our website, fightfoodwastehub.com.au, for more information about the series, and you can access previous recordings, including transcripts, audio, and video. We're also on YouTube, so please subscribe to our channel, Food Waste Matters. Now, today we are talking about the role of innovative packaging solutions in reducing food waste. And this is an interesting topic because good packaging plays a critical role in extending the shelf life of food products, thus contributing to a reduction in waste. But packaging itself can also contribute to broader waste management challenges. Now, our guest today is Nerida Kelton. She's the Executive Director for the Australian Institute of Packaging and is Vice President of Sustainability and Saving Food in the World Packaging Organization. She's worked in the packaging industry for over 25 years, with over 2 decades working for the AIP, which is the peak professional body for packaging training and education in Australasia. And when it comes to that education aspect, Nerida is herself an active lecturer and trainer in the AIP educational portfolio. We're hoping she can teach us something here today. She's committed to educating and training packaging professionals in the importance of sustainable and circular packaging design and recognising best practice in this area. Nerida, welcome.
Thank you. That was a fabulous introduction, Andrew. and thank you so much for having me to talk about one of my favourite topics.
Yes, it's absolutely our pleasure. And just reading off your CV, you seem like the perfect person to talk to about this issue. So I want to start by setting the scene around food packaging and looking at some of the ways it plays a positive role in mitigating food waste generally. And then we can talk about some of the potential trade-offs after that. So let's start with the good stuff. How does good packaging reduce food waste?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really important question too, Andrew. We forget that packaging has a role to play, and we like to describe packaging as a vessel. And so when you think about it, this vessel needs to contain, protect, preserve, extend shelf life, and transport a product all the way through a value chain, all the way through to a household. And so what we want to make sure is that packaging is designed at the start to be fit for purpose and to be functional, and also hopefully, fingers crossed, environmentally friendly as well. And so one of the areas that people are often forgetting now, because this loud conversation around plastic and plastic floating in the ocean and plastic waste, is that packaging plays a fundamental role in protecting not only a product, but also humans. And that's health and safety of what's inside inside the packaging. So we need to make sure that if it is plastic, if it happens to be a plastic material, or it may be a fiber-based material, that it's fit for purpose, it's functional. But at the end of the day, it has to protect a product. It has to protect humans, and it has to protect it all the way through to a household. And so sometimes we have to talk about that aspect. And it sounds a little bit boring, but we need to remind people that it's a vessel, it has a role, it needs to be fit for purpose, and it needs to protect us and the products.
Okay, so far beyond just preserving the food itself in terms of extending the shelf life, there's also a human health aspect here that we should be conscious of.
Yeah, and you know, the extension of shelf life is an area that we often talk about in safe food packaging design and safe food packaging design principles. Extension of shelf life and barrier protection and preservation is critical when we're talking about minimizing food loss and waste. Because if we can extend the shelf life of a product, particularly when you think about export markets, so products that are going into export markets, we're not going to waste food, right? So it plays a role. And this is the thing. We see packaging as a really important, it plays an integral role in minimizing food loss and waste. Another area that a lot of people don't consider, Andrew, is if you ever think about all the products that you have got a knife or a pair of scissors to in your home, and you can't open them, or you have a mince tray and you can't find the pull tab and you can't open it, get some scissors and you stab it. But you think about how often you've spilt food, how often you haven't been able to reseal a packaging, and you put it into your fridge and then it's turned. If we can design our packaging better at the start and more intuitively at the start, to be able to hold it, grip it, open it, reseal it properly, be able to make it freezer ready, we can minimize food loss and waste across the value chain. So again, there's a lot of areas that packaging can play that role.
Right. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if you know all the details here around packaging for fruit and vegetables, for example. Now, I've heard, I'm not sure, maybe you can enlighten me here. Certain vegetables and fruits should be packaged in certain materials. For example, people talk about using, when you go to the supermarket, they always give you a paper bag for the mushrooms, for example.
Yeah.
And people talk about the paper being a superior packaging material for that particular product. Are there any others? I mean, bananas is something I've heard about as well. Can you
I
tell us a
mean,
bit about that sort of stuff?
there's a lot of different things, and again, you think about consumer perceptions and consumers' views on, particularly around plastic at the moment, and single-use plastic. So produce
Mm.
is a really good area where we have to have a balanced conversation, because obviously a lot of consumers are driving change. They're driving it to more sustainable materials, and in their mind that's fiber and renewable. But as you said, there are particular packaging types and particular materials for potatoes, mushrooms, particular vegetables, cucumbers, etc., that preserve, extend shelf life, protect a product. And so if you think about a country as huge as Australia and the way that we transport a lot of our produce, sometimes that piece of packaging material that a lot of consumers don't want is in fact going to extend the shelf life of that product. And I'll give you an example. Cucumbers. There is a lot of conversation about cucumbers. Why are they wrapped in plastic? Why do we need them in plastic? Well, that's to extend shelf life, and that's to protect the product, and to make sure that you don't get a soggy cucumber when you pick it up. And so just by putting that plastic wrap on it, it extends the shelf life by approximately 2 weeks. And so
And
these are
that
the things that we have to have a louder conversation about, right?
No, that's great because I can relate to that one. I've definitely resealed my plastic cucumber case and used it for multiple gin and tonics across the week. So
I'm the same. I like a cucumber in my gin, so we're the
excellent.
same. It's very important to protect it for our gin. But I think that even things like the type of packaging that's wrapped around potatoes, they serve a purpose, and it's fit for purpose. It's chosen and selected because it's fit for purpose.
Right. So most people, like you said, would only see the plastic as a potential item going into landfill rather than something that's actually extending the shelf life and preventing food waste from entering that landfill as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's also where I guess, we could talk about people might say emphasizing packaging as a solution to food waste has some downsides. And I mean by this, of course, that the volume of food packaging that does also find its way into waste. I mean, does that offset the benefits? How should we think about the balance?
Yeah. And so this is a really tough one for not only us as an industry, but how we communicate to consumers and how we better communicate to consumers. Because not only does packaging play a role in minimizing food waste, quite often it is plastic packaging. And the trade-off is that conversation around that a lot of consumers don't care. At the end of the day, they want to go down a fresh produce aisle. They want to see as much as least amount of single-use plastic as possible, which we all understand and appreciate. And they simply don't care that that cucumber is wrapped. One of the areas that I think the industry struggles with, and also government, is communicating to consumers why we need it, which we've had that conversation, but also the trade-off if you don't have it. And the trade-off is shelf life. And the trade-off is damaged products. And the trade-off is soggy cucumbers. And if you live in a small town and you can receive your fresh produce from a market really close to you, you don't need single-use plastic. You simply don't. If you can go to your local store that's just down the road, if you have a retail store and you can grab your, your bags yourself and you pop up, you don't need it. So it depends on where you live, how far away you are from a store, and how often you get to stores, whether we can have that trade-off. Now, obviously, if you go down a fresh produce aisle, which is a great example of this balanced discussion, there is a lot more fiber and renewable materials, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic to see. So the trade-off is making sure that there is science behind it, that there is evidence behind it to ensure that if you move from a plastic material to a fiber or renewable material, that in fact it can have equal or lower environmental impact. And so we want to make sure that the trade-off is not what we call unintended consequences, which is food waste.
Okay. Well, this might be a bit of a edgy question to ask. I'm not sure, but as you probably know, in multiple jurisdictions across Australia, governments are moving to eliminate the use of single-use plastics.
Mhm.
What's the Institute's position on that?
Mhm. So if we step back, the federal government and NEPM have the 2025 national packaging targets, which we all must follow. Anybody that has packaging, whether it's primary, secondary, or tertiary packaging, they must follow them and must adhere to them. And a lot of the focus is very much around how do we reduce the use of packaging wherever possible, and how do we then focus on reusing it and then making sure that it's recyclable. So that's absolutely paramount to having a lower environmental impact. The trade-off that we do have, though, just quickly, Andrew, is that packaging waste has a lower environmental impact than food waste. And so when we talk about environmental impacts, we talk a lot about packaging waste. Consumers talk a lot about it, but they don't talk enough about food waste. And so when we talk about a balanced approach, it's really important that we remind people that work in food and beverage that the environmental impacts of food waste are far more significant than that of packaging waste. In fact, 4 times that of packaging waste. And so we respect that and support single-use plastic. We have to get rid of it. We have to get rid of unnecessary problematic materials, and we have to get rid of materials that simply can't be recycled in this country. So we support it. We do a lot of training and education to make sure that designers understand they have to design it out at the start. However, we have to go back to the principles. Fit for purpose and functional first, and then we have to ensure the environmental impacts of it. Understanding that could be a trade-off if you move from one material to another, and the trade-off could be food waste. So as long as we have those conversations, then we completely support removing unnecessary single-use plastic wherever possible.
Very good. Great answer. You spoke about the need to educate, I guess, not only consumers, but regulators as well. And I guess that's where the Institute comes in. Could you tell us more about the Australian Institute for Packaging and about how you got involved?
That's great. Look, I mean, we are, as you can see, 60 years of age this year. So we have been the peak professional body. We're the only peak professional body for packaging training and education in Australia and New Zealand, and also some parts of Asia. So at the end of the day, who are we? We're here to help people that design packaging. And we're here to help them, whether it's their primary, secondary, or tertiary, and it doesn't matter what industry or what category. And it can be a glass bottle, it can be a PET bottle, it can be a corrugate box, it could be modified atmosphere packaging, anything and everything to do with packaging. We have experts in our education team that are available to train people. The one of the things that we started to see, particularly when the Fight Food Waste Cooperative Research Centre was forming before they actually received their grants, was that we needed to be a part of this more serious conversation around food waste, because a lot of our members are food and beverage manufacturers. And so we wanted to make sure that we were part of the conversation and that we could help people in the industry to understand that packaging had a really important role. It might not be the most important discussion or the largest research in the CRC, but we just wanted to make sure that we could be there and talk to people and to make them understand that we can't just eliminate all of the packaging because of these unintended consequences. And so we became a part of the Fight Food Waste Cooperative Research Centre. We were a core participant from day one. We were also on the National Food Waste Strategy for the federal government. We're a part of that as well, which was fantastic to contribute from a packaging perspective, which is quite odd when everyone else is talking about different areas of food waste, like, anaerobic digestion and valorization, and then we come in and talk about packaging. We have committed to Stop Food Waste Australia, so we are a founding participant of Stop Food Waste Australia, and we are also now a supporting association of the Food Pact. But if we step back a little bit further, we have been a massive supporter of Food Bank for over 15 years. And we created a food bank hamper program 15 years ago where we worked with our industry and our members to be able to donate a significant amount of product to create hampers every year for Christmas for those in need in Queensland. And in the 12 years that we were running the program, we packed over 15,000 hampers. Everything that we did was donated by our industry and our members, and we physically had volunteers, thousands of volunteers that would come in and pack all of the hampers, and then we would donate them to Food Bank every year. We continue to support Food Bank as much as we can, and Oz Harvest and all of those rescue associations, because we believe that our members have an important role to support those food rescue organisations, and we as individuals have a responsibility to support those in need as well. So this is something that's really near and dear to the AIP. It's very personal to many of us in the AIP because we think that food waste has such significant environmental impacts, but we just don't talk about it enough.
Well, we're here to talk more about it here at Food Waste Matters. That's great to hear about your engagement with those various organisations, with the CRC, also with the food rescue organisations. Does the AIP do outreach to consumers?
No, we don't. We would love to be involved in campaigns that do. It's certainly not in our remit. Our remit is traditionally people who design packaging. However, if there was opportunities for us to contribute to consumer education pieces, we would be welcoming of that, because we think it's really important. And I really do think that it's one of the missing pieces, Andrew, in this conversation in this country. And I'm not the only person that believes this. Certainly at the Food Waste Summit last year, we had many conversations around this. One of the biggest missing pieces that we have is support by governments to have a consumer education piece about food waste. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to discuss a little bit more, because we really need the consumers to be engaged in this conversation, because we're all consumers, right? So we are all contributing to the problem.
Yes, definitely. And I think there are a range of pretty simple kind of tips that organisations like yours can offer to shoppers, to consumers, to help them reduce food waste, and also, I would say, reduce their food bill by preserving the food that they have for longer and being able to consume it themselves.
Yeah, a lot of work's been done on small portion control, because not the households aren't as big as they used to be in Australia. And I know from myself, there's only two of us here. I tend to eat for two people, but my husband doesn't eat as much as I do. But little things like don't buy hungry. Don't buy bulk packs if you aren't going to make the effort to split them up and freeze them. Look for packaging that is freezer ready. Look for really innovative packaging that can in fact reseal, open and reseal. These are all things that can be done to help you to minimize your food waste in your household. Smart packaging can help you. And looking for little symbols that say that it's freezer ready, or small portions, or multi-packs instead of a bulk pack. They're all tips that we would encourage people to consider.
Okay, so you've listed, I guess, a whole range of attributes within packaging that can contribute to, extending shelf life, extending people's budgets, and also reducing the food waste, of course. Let's talk a little bit more in some specifics, because you mentioned resealable packs, and I've noticed myself that there do seem to be more and more packaging solutions out there that have a resealable option. And
Yes.
I find that really useful and a really good step forward. But probably for you, that's pretty old hat. What's the kind of next wave of interesting food preserving packaging? Can you tell us about some specific examples, maybe some companies that you work with and how you
Yeah.
work with those companies?
Yeah, look, I mean, I could talk all day about the innovations that we see, and I think I'll start with. I'm not going to have time to tell you all of them, so I would encourage everyone to visit our website and have a look at our case studies that are on our website, because there's some just fantastic solutions. So the AIP runs the Australasian Packaging Innovation and Design Awards, or as we call them, the PETAs, and they are for Australia and New Zealand. And they are also the exclusive entry point for the World Star Packaging Awards for our region. So the only way that a company can enter the World Stars through Australia and New Zealand is to, in fact, win a PETA award. And one of the areas, again, that we believe is really important is, obviously we have a number of special awards, but we have sustainable, of course. We have accessible, which is really important when we're touching on an inclusive design, when we're touching on food waste, because that goes back to holding, gripping, containing, etc. So the accessible is a really important one. And then we also have safe food packaging. And safe food packaging, we're really proud of the fact we were the first country and the first member of the World Packaging Organization, who runs the World Star Awards in the world, to develop a special award for safe food packaging. And we worked with some really fantastic experts, academics in RMIT, and we came up with some really amazing science-driven research criteria for our awards, and they're really tough award, the special award. And anybody that's won the Safe Food Packaging Award in this region knows how tough the criteria is in the judging, because we want to ensure the LCA is there and the environmental impacts are measured. And so we have this Safe Food Packaging Award, which has been around for about 9 years now. And we've seen some brilliant packs over the years. Now, obviously, when we started this, we were seeing more of what we call the extension of shelf life, like the modified atmosphere, the skin packaging, the vacuum packaging. And if you go down a meat aisle and have a look at all of that packaging, that's about extension of shelf life. And so that's a really good example of innovative safe food packaging. Traditional, as you say, it's not sort of where we're moving to. And then we've had a lot of changes over the last few years where you're seeing tears. So, easy to open, easy to grip, easy to tear type pack. So we had an advancement in that. And then we're seeing you can easily tear it and then reseal it. And resealing it is about protecting the product and also extending the shelf life and maintaining the integrity of that product. And then we went down into changes like bulk packs, multi-packs, small portion control. So a lot of packs went smaller. And then we shifted to freezer ready. So freezer ready packs are fantastic because they can say to us, stop being lazy, make sure you put it in your freezer so you're not going to waste food. But then we've had a lot of changes, and we've had some really interesting ones. And one that I love talking about is from Simplot, and it's chips, hot chips. And I am probably guilty of admitting this publicly. I'm going to admit it here publicly again. I'm probably the only human in Australia that doesn't mind soggy chips. I know there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to like me for that. Now, apparently the research says that I'm the only human and everybody else wants nice, crisp chips. They don't want soggy chips. And so when you think about all the Uber Eats and all the deliveries that you get and you have your hot chips, one of the areas that they found was that they were wasting food because it started to get soggy, and people were really upset when they got it in their home because they were getting soggy cold chips. And so they came up with this fantastic aerated little box, and I know you've seen it on our website. And I would encourage people to have a look at it. It's aerated, it maintains all the freshness of the chips. And it also is microwavable, just in case, they're a little bit cool when they get to you. But the one thing that I really like about the pack is not only does it maintain the crispness of the chip, which is paramount to most people in Australia, it's tamper evident. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you think it's tamper evident?
Well, I guess in the scenario you mentioned where you have perhaps a food delivery driver bringing your food to your door, maybe they've had a sneaky little seagull chip or two.
Exactly. And so they have a tamper evidence seal, which, I mean, I know I would not be able to be an Uber driver because I probably would want one because of the smell of them. So it's a really intuitive pack. Another area that we're seeing a lot of change in is what we call intelligent packaging. And intelligent packaging is, look, the perfect example is in the pandemic, QR codes. Okay. And so one of the areas that you can communicate to people, because so you think about you've got a small pack, right? And you don't have much real estate on the pack. And there's all these things that you've got to put on it, legal ingredients, et cetera, and you run out of room on your packaging. Well, a QR code or a 2D code has the ability to take all the other information that you inherently can't put on pack and communicate it to consumers, just like when you order in a restaurant now, a QR code has your menu and you can order through the QR code on your menu. And so QR codes, 2D codes are advancing rapidly. There are some amazing examples. Woolworths, there's a premium grape that was exported through the Table Grapes Association that won one of our awards as well. But the thing about 2D codes and QR codes is they're also about tracking, tracing, recall, serialization, authentication. They can identify the products if they're premium export products, et cetera. And then another area that we're seeing a lot in intelligent packaging is thermochromic inks and color changing, time, temperature indicators. And so if you think about a pack in your fridge, we have the ability now through these solutions that it can change color and alert a consumer if it's going to spoil, if it's going to get towards the use by date. And so what it does is it changes color on a label on your item in your fridge, and you will visually see that. And you will be able to say, I've got to eat this, I need to cook something with this because this is going to spoil. The other advantage of intelligent packaging like this is that the brands and the transport companies can also utilize the system. So the idea is they can set the temperature parameters on this system, and they can identify if they're working in a cold chain environment through transport to the retail market. They can identify if a door gets left open of a truck, if a temperature changes by accident or there's a system out, et cetera, and they can stop it. And they can make sure that they don't waste as much food along that value chain because they can identify where it is, they get alerted to it. So this intelligent packaging plays so many fantastic roles, and it is an underutilized area that we really think is advancing rapidly and has some significant benefits to minimizing food loss and waste.
Well, that's fascinating, Nerida. Thanks for telling us all about intelligent packaging. The humble QR code has come quite a long way. I remember when that technology first appeared. I don't think anyone could have predicted how widespread and used it is now. But it's hard to go past the example of the hot chips. And I have to say that I'm going to have to leave you being the 0.001% of Australians who likes a soggy chip. There's nothing worse.
I know. I should be ashamed of myself, but I just love upsetting all of you. So
It's good to be controversial. You could start a discussion that way. So there's a range of really interesting and innovative solutions out there. Why aren't we seeing more widespread and accelerated adoption of these? What are the biggest challenges to improving our food packaging profile?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and we certainly have this conversation often. So, as a part of the Fight Food Waste CRC project that we do, so our project is Safe Food Packaging, and again, I'd encourage everyone to have a look at what we're doing. We have developed a series of 5 principles or 5 guidelines that we would like designers to use to embed into their design principles to potentially minimize their food loss and waste through their design. And one of the things that we did with RMIT, who's our research partner in the CRC, is we did some research, consumer insights, industry insight reports. And there's 2 available on the CRC website and also through the AIP website. And anecdotally, Andrew, we knew this, but it was really important for us to have the evidence. We knew that the industry wasn't that invested in changing their packaging to minimize food loss and waste. And we wanted to see whether the research proved that, and sadly it did. And so I think that one of the challenges we've got is showing brands the value that these changes and possibly cost changes are going to have in their environmental impacts across their business. So if they're working on an SDG principle, or they have an ESG model, or they have a sustainability plan or a roadmap, food waste should be a part of it. So it can't just be packaging waste. It needs to have food waste in it. And as a part of that, packaging sits under that area as well. And so we as an industry need to do more to show the brands the value, because there really is significant environmental impacts in doing this and reductions. And we also need to help some of the smaller companies who don't have the resources or the time to be able to identify the types of solutions that they should be moving to. So one of the areas that we've worked really hard on is not only to develop the guidelines, but also to develop best practice case studies. And they're all available, as I mentioned, on our website, and we share them in all our training courses and in every workshop and webinar that we do, because we want to help people, particularly the SMEs, to be able to go, oh, okay, I could use that, or I could take that particular aspect and I could put that into my packaging. A lot of the industry believes there's a concern around cost. And again, that's not necessarily so, because if the unintended consequence is food waste in their business, then we could, certainly have those conversations around those changes. We just need to do a little bit more work, Andrew, I think, in communicating and having the opportunity to talk to you, and hopefully to the people that are listening. It's a part of this discussion. So it's great for us to have this opportunity.
Yeah, and we will definitely provide a link to the AIP website is in part of the description of this video, so that viewers can go and have a look at all the great work that you guys are doing. You make some really good points there. I think that there is certainly a value proposition for these companies to upgrade the sustainability of their packaging, not only in terms of meeting their own perhaps ESG targets, corporate targets, but it's also apparent that there's a big mob of consumers out there who will pay a little bit more for a product that they know is sustainable and is contributing to reducing food waste and packaging waste.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important aspect. When people think about sustainable, most of the time they think about packaging waste. They don't talk about the food waste. And so we all need to be talking about both. You can't have the conversation if you work in food and beverage about one or the other. You've got to be talking about both, because there's trade-offs there. And if you're producing food, then you need to understand all your environmental impacts.
You said it. And how can any manufacturers who might be out there listening and have an interest in this get in touch with the AIP and participate in your programs?
Well, we have a website that's available for anyone to access all of the best practice. We have training courses. We, in fact, have a training course on safe food packaging, and a lot of our other training courses always incorporate a conversation around food waste as well. Because we do a lot of training on sustainable packaging and the 2025 national packaging targets and the sustainable packaging guidelines, it leads to food waste as well. And so pretty much everything we do in terms of training these days, we will always ensure that we're talking about food waste as well as safe food packaging, so that we can keep raising this conversation and having a louder conversation about it. Because 8 or 9 years ago, when we were talking about safe food packaging, a lot of people had never even heard of the term. So I think we are a lot of steps forward, but we've got quite a lot of steps to go.
Great. Well, thanks very much for taking the time to explain all of these really interesting angles for us. And if I may use a pun, unpacking the issues. Uh, we here at Food Waste Matters are keen to look at all the different aspects of reducing food waste, and good packaging solutions is an absolutely critical angle. So thanks for telling us about that today, Nerida.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you to our subscribers for joining us on this edition of Food Waste Matters, brought to you by Honey and Fox and sponsored by the Fight Food Waste CRC. The Fight Food Waste Hub is for everybody who is interested in reducing food waste. Invite your colleagues to sign up to our mailing list and get notified when new content is published. Just visit our website, www.fightfoodwastehub.com.au. And again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Food Waste Matters. And finally, if you'd like to get in touch with us here at the Hub, please send an email to hello@fightfoodwastehub.com.au. We'd love to hear from you with feedback, comments, or questions. So until next time, keep up the fight.